My name is Paul Connolly, and in this series, I'm delving into the world of fraud. Rooting out the criminals.
You target elderly people. I don't care.
The cheats.
I can apply for benefits.
Easy.
And the scammers who will stop at nothing for cash.
He lured into his death. He'd executed him.
And we'll go undercover.
All right, here goes.
To catch them red-handed.
How do you feel about the fact that you're potentially cutting people's lives short?
This time I'll be investigating the scammers who tried to steal millions in insurance by faking illness or even their own death.
There was no record at the mortuary of such a death. But of course, the whole thing was an absolute scam.
And the crooks so intent on cashing in, they stooped to unbelievable depths.
The two of them put on a very convincing performance of a man who was in a coma.
And to see how easy it is for crooks to cash in on life insurance policies, I tried to fake my own death.
So if I have the cash and I write connections, I can kill myself off.
Correct.
But first, today, I'm at a funeral for someone very close to me, and although this is a sensitive time, I feel I should share it with you.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for being here. Today's ceremony is a celebration. Born on the 3rd of June, 1979, he did well at school and later attended university. A popular figure among his colleagues, he'd made a name for himself tracking down fraudsters, a job he really loved.
That's me. I am dead, gone, a ghost, and if I choose to, free to start a life as someone else entirely. But believe me when I say I'm not the first person to try something like this.
The many different and unusual ways that fraudsters and crooks fake their own death.
It's interesting, to say the least.
Everyone here is in on it and knows I'm fitting well, but for the fraudsters faking their death, secrecy and subterfuge is key. So, I've managed to arrange my own funeral. Job very literally done. And over the course of this program, I'm going to show you how I faked my own death. Every day, around £9 million gets paid out in life insurance and illness policies. A fact that hasn't escaped the attention of would-be fraudsters. But it's not just fictitious illnesses they're interested in. Amazingly, some scammers go as far as actually faking their own death, in the hope of striking it lucky.
How you doing?
John Saunders, Paul. How do you do?
As John Saunders knows all too well. He's a specialist claims investigator and has been sniffing out fake deaths for the major insurance companies for nearly 30 years now. He's worked on nearly all the high-profile cases, including the famous disappearing canoeist, John Darwin.
So what kinds of people are trying to pull this scam, John? What are their circumstances?
I often have people in debt, and the only way out of the debt is to die for the insurance companies to repay the bank loans.
It seems incredible that people can get their hands on fake death certificates, fake medical reports, police reports. How are people doing this?
If you know a member of staff at a rather large government hospital, they can often find a blank pad of death certificates and tear one out, and put a stamp on it, and you fill in a cause of death and add a doctor's name to it.
In terms of the size of the claims that people put in, what's the biggest fake claim somebody's put in with you?
I can remember claims, £5 million plus in the past.
This is huge money then. So if I was that way inclined and I wanted to try to fake my own death, where would I start, John?
You'd have to get a death certificate. You'd have to get one from a doctor or someone in the medical profession, or someone who had access to those documents where they could get a certificate and fill it in.
So I'd need to find someone dodgy on the black market to slip a few quid to, and then I might be able to get my hands on a death certificate, and the ball is rolling.
Yes, yes.
So, if I want to get my fake death certificate on the black market, there's only one place to start. The web has obviously made the world infinitely smaller. Things are just easier to get now. And a good example of that is fake documents. It's incredible, this. There is absolutely no shortage whatsoever of people out there online, hidden somewhere, anonymous, willing to sell documents of all kinds in the black market. No shortage whatsoever. But the web is also full of chancers, pretenders, people who will promise to get you something, then disappear with your cash. Finding someone who can really get me my own genuine-looking death certificate is not going to be easy. Coming up, the outrageous case of the criminal in a coma.
What made this so unusual was the lengths the knights were prepared to go to try and avoid justice.
And in my bid to get my hands on a realistic-looking fake death certificate, I meet a forger from the criminal underworld. So if I have the cash, I can kill myself off?
Correct.
My name is Paul Connolly, and I'm looking into the corrupt world of large-scale insurance fraud. From crooks who plan their own death for a cash payout, to scammers making fake personal injury claims. One man fighting the fight against dodgy claimants is David Spencer, a solicitor who represents insurance companies. In 2012, he was involved in one of the most outrageous attempts at fraud he'd ever seen.
Given that he presented his claim in excess of £800,000, I think Sean's only motivation in this whole thing was money.
In 2003, Sean Summers worked as a general labourer and a forklift truck driver.
Sean was parking up a stacker truck, and as he got down from the vehicle, he slipped because of a defective step, and he broke his ankle and fractured his wrist.
For the father of three, this was disastrous. But thankfully, his company was fully insured.
Sean Summers presented a claim for compensation following an accident at work. That claim was referred to his insurers, and his insurers then passed the claim on to me to deal with. He said that he wasn't able to return to any form of work, that he required care assistance around the house with shopping, cleaning and the like. He was incapable of doing practically everything on a day-to-day basis. The claim was put together by solicitors, and the total figure that was presented was in excess of £830,000.
For a wrist and ankle injury, the claim seemed unusually high, and the insurers decided to carry out surveillance on Sean Summers. What they found was shocking.
The first piece of surveillance that we did showed Sean to be in perfect health. He was driving a works van. He was seen loading that works van with kitchen units, so clearly capable of work, actually working. No crutches, no plaster cast, no strapping for his apparently injured ankle, and in perfect health. And the surveillance that was undertaken after that, he was taking part in everyday activities that he said he couldn't do. So he was doing the school run.
Yeah, he's carrying his crutches in his left hand. He's opening the boot. He's got the 3 children with him that are getting into the vehicle.
He was going shopping, and he was driving to medical appointments and then getting out of the car and presenting himself in a far more disabled way than he'd been seen early that morning.
Subject is seen on crutches, going up the steps into the medical centre.
After the insurance company's surveillance had been completed, we got in touch with the Department for Work and Pensions because Sean was still claiming benefits at that stage, and the surveillance that they undertook was even more revealing.
Whilst saying he was severely disabled and claiming benefits, Sean was actually running his own business, a mobile burger van.
And surveillance was undertaken periodically over 12 months to the end of 2009. And on each occasion, we found that Sean was doing things that he clearly said he couldn't do. So 5 and 6 years after the event, surveillance was still being undertaken.
Armed with a ton of incriminating evidence, David's team sent the surveillance footage to Sean's solicitors.
I would imagine they had a very frank conversation with him.
Unbelievably, Sean persisted with his claim and his case went to court.
The trial was almost pantomime. Sean denied that he'd presented his claim fraudulently. He refused to accept that what was seen on surveillance was in fact correct. He came up with a conspiracy theory that we'd hidden surveillance that showed him to be disabled, but it was a complete nonsense.
Out of the 840 grand plus that Sean Summers was after, the judge awarded him just under 90 grand for what he felt was the genuine part of the injury. But Summers' greed meant he was left with almost nothing.
The vast bulk of what was left of the award was paid back to the state because Sean had received nearly £60,000 in state benefits. Whatever was left, we think, was handed over to his solicitors because of the shortfall in their costs.
For my investigation into the world of bogus illness and fake death claims, I've been trying to see if I can fake my own death by getting hold of my very own death certificate. Now it is, without question, one of the most audacious, one of the most ambitious scams that a fraudster can pull. The reason being, if you do swing it, then you're talking about a payoff into the millions. So far, I've been searching the web for some genuine leads, but haven't had much luck. It's through my underworld contacts that finally I'm put in touch with someone who has a history of forging documents. I've been told he might be able to give me a steer on how to get my hands on a fake death certificate. He's agreed to meet me face to face, but only on the condition he remains anonymous. So when did you first become involved in document forging?
This was about 20 years ago. It was the run-up to the handover of Hong Kong back to the Chinese. If you could prove that you had spent 5 years in the United Kingdom, if you could prove that, you were entitled to a British citizen passport, and that's what they wanted. So if somebody came up with a history in the United Kingdom of 4 years, I simply altered the document to make that into 5 years.
So you saw an opportunity in Hong Kong.
Correct.
And you set up shop over there.
I sensed a business opportunity.
What documents did you decide to forge?
Exam certificates, attendance certificates, references, professional qualifications, medical training records, you name it. There wasn't nothing I couldn't do, I'll be honest with you. But the territory I did get into was alteration of passports. I had to create an immigration stamp that they entered on such and such a day.
Would you alter these documents by hand or was it electronically?
No. So I purchased an old manual typewriter. I also purchased a printer and I bought every single font that was available so I could match the fonts on the existing documents.
So you became known as the best in the business?
Yeah.
You were earning decent money doing this?
Correct.
Was it big money?
It was big money, yes. We were charging what was then 1 million Hong Kong dollars, £80,000 in those days.
Is there today a big market for forged documents in Britain?
Absolutely, still a big market.
So for an official document then, like a death certificate, where do you go to get an original document like that?
You have to bribe somebody. India, Africa, money talks very loudly in those places. And I guarantee you, if you go to the right place, the right people, you will be linked up.
So if I have the cash and I make the right connections, I can kill myself off. No
Correct.
problem. I can vanish.
Correct.
So it seems if I want an authentic-looking death certificate, my best bet is to get one from abroad. But if I'm going to do this, I'm going to have to locate a fixer. Fixers are go-betweens, people linked to the criminal underworld who have the connections to get you what you need. These are not characters you really want to spend a lot of time with, but it seems if I'm going to fake my own death, I don't have much choice. In 2015, there were 350 bogus insurance claims made every single day. And one of the fastest growing areas was fake personal injury claims. But the lengths fraudsters are going to fake illness and injury are becoming more and more extreme. As this next case shows, criminal barrister Jim Davis explains.
It started off as a fairly straightforward fraud case, really. It was an allegation that Alan Knight had defrauded an elderly pensioner of all of his savings. It was fairly routine.
The pensioner who had Alzheimer's was Alan's neighbour. Alan was called in for questioning on several occasions on charges of stealing £40,000 from him. But then Alan's health appeared to deteriorate.
He started coming into the police station using a wheelchair and a neck brace. And then as time went on, he became increasingly infirm.
Despite Alan's apparent injuries, the case against him for defrauding his neighbour was listed for trial. But out of the blue, just days before the hearing, Alan slipped into what seemed to be a semi-comatose state and was rushed to hospital.
Doctors, surgeons, consultants all examined him, trying to find out what the cause was.
Doctors were unable to find the reason for Alan's sudden deterioration, and he was discharged to be cared for at home. The prosecution continued to set trial dates in the hope that Alan would be well enough to take the stand, but with no sign of a recovery, the court dates were postponed 22 times in 2 months.
A lot of people must have wondered what on earth the police and the CPS were doing, pursuing a man who was in that sort of condition.
A sentiment shared by Alan's wife, who campaigned tirelessly on his behalf to get the case dropped.
Helen Knight ultimately wrote to the Prime Minister and to the Attorney General, and they were naturally concerned to take up the case on their behalf. She contacted the national press as well, invited them to take photographs of Alan at his bedside, lying with an oxygen mask on his face. And she did everything that she could to pressurize the prosecution to drop the case.
But in 2013, a piece of evidence surfaced that would lift the lid on one of the most extraordinary cases of deception the prosecution had ever seen.
The officer in the case, Paul Connolly, had the initiative to make inquiries with the automatic number plate recognition system for the Knight's vehicle.
The Knight's car was caught on CCTV going over the Severn Bridge. Not unusual, apart from the fact that it appeared to be driven by the alleged wheelchair-bound and semi-comatose Alan Knight. Local CCTV records were then searched, and amazingly, footage was found of an able-bodied Alan Knight doing his shopping.
One would think that most people confronted with that would be prepared to put their hands up and admit that the game was up. But the Knights were made of sterner stuff than that. Their story then was that this was not Alan Knight. This was Alan Knight's brother from Canada.
Undeterred, the police then raided their home and seized their computer. The evidence they found was irrefutable.
We achieved what was uncontrovertible evidence of the family snaps of the Knights on holiday, enjoying themselves at holiday parks and the like. Eventually, when we had the evidence of the photographs, when we had a statement from a doctor saying that he could find nothing wrong with him, then the court issued an arrest warrant and he was brought down to court and confronted at that time with the strength of the case that we had against him.
Alan Knight pleaded guilty to defrauding his elderly neighbour of £41,000. When it came to sentencing, there were a few extra faces in court to see him go down.
When he was sentenced, There were a number of the staff from the local hospital who had to care for him, supposedly, whilst he was in a coma, who came down to court to see him sentenced, because I think they felt pretty strongly about the way that he had behaved.
Alan was sentenced to 4.5 years in prison for fraud and 14 months for perverting the course of justice. His wife, Helen, was sentenced to 10 months. Still to come, I get a step closer to faking my own death.
I've just got an email to confirm that, yes, there is a bloke. On paper, at least, he is willing to kill me.
And the incredible case of the disappearing dead woman.
I couldn't trace anything in her name, and there was no record at the mortuary of such a death.
In this episode, I'm looking into the crooks and scammers who fake illness and even death to get their hands on large quantities of cash. And to see how easy it is for crooks to disappear, I'm trying to get my hands on my own death certificate. I've done some searching online, and I've got advice from a convicted black market forger.
India, Africa, money talks very loudly in those places.
Now, through some of my underworld contacts, I've been given an email of a guy in Nigeria who might be able to hook me up with my own death certificate. We've sent him an email, and he's replied.
I've just got an email to confirm that, yes, there is a bloke called Jack, based in Nigeria, he claims. On paper, at least, he is willing to kill me.
This so-called Jack claims he can get hold of a genuine death certificate from a hospital in Lagos and can pay an official pathologist to fill out the form.
Obviously, there's a huge element of chance in this. There's no guarantees that he's the real deal. No guarantees that he won't run off with the £600 fee that he charges, that he tells me it costs to get your hands on a real death certificate. But still, this is by far the best lead the crew and I have come up with so far. So my instinct is telling me to give this a crack.
So, through a third party, I'm having to transfer £600 to a man I don't even know really exists. To protect myself and the members of the team from potentially undesirable people, we've been advised to set up a PO box for all documents to be sent to. If my fake death certificate hasn't arrived within a month, we'll know we've been conned. If you think exaggerating an illness or even faking a death to claim on a policy only affects the insurance company, then you'd be mistaken. Identity fraud comes in all shapes and sizes. Sometimes victims are totally unaware that their identities are being used fraudulently, which can make it hard for the police to detect until it's too late. Detective Inspector Warren Hines was the lead investigator on a particularly gruesome case, which nearly led to one fraudster getting away with murder.
To kill somebody that was close to you on the basis that you were going to profit financially by that is just abhorrent. On Wednesday, the 28th of November 2012, some local dog walkers found a body floating face down in Sanwell Valley Country Park.
The body found was identified as Jasbir Baines, a homeless man who had issues with drug and alcohol abuse. Jasbir was found in a lake at the West Bromwich Park with his neck slashed.
You know, at that stage it was really unclear what had actually happened. The injury was a neutral injury, really. The injuries to his neck was capable of being inflicted by himself. We discussed with the family that it was a possibility that he'd done it himself. And it really was the family's belief that that probably was the likely cause of his death.
The police would have issued a verdict of death by suicide, but some of the details of the case made them suspicious. Amazingly, many of Jasbir's final movements were captured on CCTV. What you're seeing now is the actual footage of Jasbir's last night alive. He's the man with his hood up. It turned out that on this fated night, a cousin of Jasbir's had paid for him to stay at a boarding house. So for the first time in a while, Jasbir had somewhere to sleep. But the CCTV footage shows that he left the comfort of his B&B around midnight.
I thought that was really odd, that a man who had been sleeping rough all of a sudden was warm, he'd been fed, he'd got a clean bed to stay in, and yet for some reason he'd got up and he'd left. To my mind, he could only be going out to meet somebody that he knew quite well and really trusted as well.
So the police started investigating friends of Jasbir's and got in touch with a man called Jamie Ray, who had known Jasbir since school.
Jamie Ray describes their relationship, describes Jasbir as being down on his luck. He'd actually allowed him to sleep in his van overnight because he got nowhere else to go. So, you know, at first glance, he really did seem to be like somebody who got Jasbir's best interests at heart.
During the course of their investigations, the police discovered that Jamie Ray had lent Jasbir around £14,000 6 years earlier, and that Jasbir emigrated to Canada without paying back a penny.
He appeared very relaxed about that to us. He said that as far as he was concerned, it was water under the bridge. As the investigation progressed, we identified a number of people who recollect the time when Jasbir emigrated to Canada and described just how angry Jamie Ray was and how fixed on some kind of retribution against him he was.
Suspicious that Jamie Ray wasn't being entirely honest with them, the police undertook a financial investigation into his affairs. Nothing could have prepared them for what they found.
What it revealed was that shortly after Jasbir had emigrated to Canada, Jamie Ray had changed his name to Jasbir Baines. He'd taken a mortgage out in that name on a house in West Bromwich, and he'd also taken out a life insurance policy, which in the event of Jasbir Baines' death would have paid out a sum of close to £400,000.
Jamie Ray had taken on Jasbir's identity and bought a lucrative life insurance policy in Jasbir's name that would pay out to Jamie if he died. He had a motive to kill Jasbir, so the police arrested him on suspicion of murder.
When we searched Jamie Ray's house, we found a blank death certificate. There's no doubt in my mind at all that had we not been sniffing around, that would have been submitted to the life insurance company. They'd have been obliged to pay out a large sum of money. And you know, that would have really sorted Jamie Ray out. At the time, he'd got a deteriorating financial situation. The only way that it could be resolved was to kill Jasbir.
There was more evidence found at Jamie Ray's house which connected him to the murder of Jasbir Baines. Ray had his own security camera at the front of his property, but on the night Jasbir died, this camera was mysteriously tampered with.
We discovered that the CCTV camera on the front of the house was moved from showing people coming to the address and leaving the address. You know, and yet here we are hours before Jasbir's died, it's suddenly moved to show nothing.
The police were also able to trace a text message received by Jasbir on his last night alive to a mobile phone belonging to Jamie Ray. After a thorough investigation, the police were able to establish that on the evening of the 28th of November 2012, Jasbir Baines left his B&B to meet his lifelong friend Jamie Ray. Ray then murdered Baines by slashing his neck and dumped his body in a lake. Ray planned to cash in the life insurance policy he'd taken out in Baines's name.
Jamie Ray had lured Jasbir to his death. He'd executed him, and he'd done that so that he could benefit to the tune of just under £400,000 by his death. Without the fraud, there would have been no murder.
In February 2014, Jamie Ray was found guilty of the murder of Jasbir Baines and sent to prison for life.
My opinion of Jamie Ray is that he's one of the most cold-hearted and callous people that I've ever had the misfortune to come across. And I hope that his every waking moment is haunted by what he's done. That would be nothing less than he deserved.
Here in the UK, there is a population of over 65 million people, but obviously not all of us are honest. And now it turns out that just for a short time, neither am I. Almost 4 weeks ago, I made a deal with a contact in Nigeria who claimed to be able to get his hands on a genuine-looking death certificate. I transferred £600 sterling into a bank account on the promise he would produce the goods. I want to keep my distance from this crook, so I've ordered the paperwork in the name of Paul O'Connor, not Paul Connolly, and rented a P.O. box well away from my home address. It's been 4 weeks since we made the transaction, and I'm on the way to the P.O. box we set up to see if we've pulled it off or if I've just become another victim of a scam.
To be honest, I'm even a little bit surprised there is something here. This looks promising. Sure enough, there it is. So it was cardiovascular accident that got me in the end. Looks real too. Looks like the real deal. All right, result.
So, I've done it. I've got a pretty realistic looking death certificate and a medical certificate. If I had taken out life insurance policies, it seems these would be all I need to cash them in. And I would probably have to say goodbye to my family and to life as I know it. But when you're looking at insurance payouts in excess of £1 million, it can seem a small price to pay. But I'm no expert in this field, so to know if I've truly succeeded in faking my own death, I'll need to get this checked by someone in the know. Find out later if it's worked. Here in the UK, around £3 billion get paid out each and every year in critical illness policies and in life insurance. But when insurance companies smell a rat, they call in this man, John Saunders. He's been investigating suspicious claims for over 30 years. In 2011, he was drafted in to investigate the death of a woman called Rose Ndage.
An insurance company contacted me to say that she died in a car accident in Uganda. She'd taken out 3 policies with 3 companies on risk for, I think the total sum was about £1.7 million.
With 4 children to look after, it's perhaps not all that surprising that Rose Ndage took out so many policies. One of them was with insurers LV. Miles Ricks picks up the story.
This appeared to be a very tragic case. It seemed to be a hit and run. There was a policy for £500,000, so quite a large case. 4 children involved, and clearly this would be something we would want to resolve as soon as possible for our policyholders.
The executor and sole beneficiary of Rose's will was her brother-in-law, John Katigi, and it was he who informed the insurers of Rose's death. But it was when they looked more closely at the letter he sent that alarm bells started ringing.
He wrote to us, and there were some features of the letter that were unusual, the language used. The style of the letter was very, very similar to previous correspondence with the policyholder who had passed away, and we began to have some doubts about this case.
At this point, the insurance company contacted John Saunders to investigate. His first step was an interview with Katigi.
He told me that he'd received a phone call from Rose's uncle in Uganda to say that she died, and that hospital staff told him that he had to go there to identify her body. This, to me, was most strange, because why couldn't her uncle identify the body?
John decided that Katigi's story was worth investigating, so he took a flight to Uganda, where he tried to meet Rose's uncle, but was unsuccessful.
He told me he travelled to the north of Uganda, conveniently, of course, so I couldn't actually see him. But he knew about her death, and then the phone, I think, went dead.
With no luck from the uncle, John then visited the hospital where Rose died, and that's when things really started to unravel.
There was no record at the mortuary of such a death. I tried to locate Dr. Lukandi, who was shown as the pathologist on the post-mortem report, and it had his mobile telephone number. I rang it and spoke to a man who said he was Dr. Lukandi. We agreed to meet, and he never turned up, and his phone was there, turned off for several days.
With suspicions from the insurers, a conveniently absent uncle, and now a no-show from the pathologist who had signed the death certificate, John came to the conclusion that the car accident had never taken place and that Katigi had made the whole thing up.
But of course, the whole thing was an absolute scam. I came back from Uganda. The matter was reported to the police, to IFED. It's the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Division, who handle insurance claims.
At that point, our files were requested by the police, passed over to them, and they began their investigations.
IFED's investigators verified John's research, and Katigi appeared at the Old Bailey, pleading not guilty to fraud.
But the jury found him guilty, and he was sentenced to 7 years.
Katigi is now serving time at Her Majesty's pleasure, but what of his co-conspirator, Rose Ndaje?
But I couldn't trace anything in her name here in London or in Uganda. It seems that Rose Ndaje didn't exist.
That's right. Rose and her 4 children were completely made up by Katigi in the hope of cashing in on almost £3 million worth of life insurance. Still to come, the dodgy doctor who fleeced over 100 grand from the NHS.
Dr. Madhu was totally arrogant. He believed that he could defraud the NHS.
And I find out from the pros if my fake death scam is a goer.
It looks like a genuine form, but it rather depends on what is actually written on here.
My name is Paul Connolly, and for years I've been tracking down crooks and gangsters that operate throughout Britain. I've been looking into the world of fake illness, injury and death. And when it comes to persistent theft and dishonesty, the very last place you would expect to find it is in the medical profession. Cheryl Hill is a counter-fraud specialist for NHS Protect, and in 2009 investigated a rather sickening case of fraud.
Dr. Madhu was employed by Cardiff and Vale University Health Board as a specialist registrar on a 6-month training contract. He started in August 2009 and was due to run until February 2010.
But some way into his training, doubts were raised over Madhu's professional conduct and he was suspended.
He was delaying providing his training portfolio to the health board, so they were unable to substantiate some of the skills he was professing to have. And I think there was also issues with the way he was dealing with other members of the team.
But almost immediately after his suspension, he submitted a sick note to his employers.
The sick certificate said he was unfit for work due to stress related to work and currently undergoing counselling.
As Dr. Madhu was on sick leave, he continued to receive a wage from Cardiff and Vale Hospital, but under its terms, he was not allowed to work anywhere else. But a chance phone call between old colleagues revealed that Dr. Madhu hadn't been as sick as he'd made out. As NHS investigator David Rees explains.
Yeah, a person who had actually worked in Cardiff had moved to Scarborough, and during the conversation with somebody in the HR department in Cardiff, Dr. Madhu's name came up in conversation, and it became apparent then that he had worked in Scarborough whilst he was on suspension.
It appeared that Dr. Madhu was moonlighting at a hospital in Scarborough whilst being on sick leave and suspended from Cardiff. The NHS counter-fraud team was called in to investigate and discovered Scarborough wasn't the only place Madhu had been working.
Initially, he worked at Sandwell Hospital in the West Midlands.
And then he finished there and got another placement then in Scarborough.
And then, last of all, he worked at the Royal Oldham Hospital in Greater Manchester.
So for the entire period, he was working at various hospitals in England.
In total, Dr. Madhu worked for 3 different hospitals, earning almost 100 grand in locum work, whilst pocketing 29 grand in sick pay from Cardiff.
None of them were aware that he'd been put on sick certificates for work related to stress. So at that stage, we'd satisfied ourselves that he potentially may have committed offences.
With all the evidence gathered, the NHS fraud team called Madhu in for an interview.
Dr. Madhu refused to come in, basically saying that he hadn't done anything wrong. So it culminated with us having to approach the Metropolitan Police to secure his attendance for interview.
With Madhu arrested, the case was referred to court.
We had a 3-week trial. During the course of the trial, Dr. Madhu again denied any wrongdoing.
The evidence was overwhelming, and the jury believed our witnesses.
He was found guilty on 6 counts of fraud, received a 24-month suspended sentence for 2 years, and was ordered to undertake 150 hours of unpaid work.
Dr. Madhu was totally arrogant. He believed that he could defraud the NHS, and he was proved to be wrong.
It seems there's no end to the scams that fraudsters will pull for cash. For the last 7 weeks, myself and my research team have been trying to get hold of a death certificate in my fake name, Paul O'Connor. Through a fixer, I was put in contact with someone in a hospital in Lagos, Nigeria, who for £600 claimed he could get me a fake death certificate. 2 days ago, I got both the death and medical certificates detailing how I died. Now, these documents look fairly impressive to me, but then again, what would I know? Because we've gone about this in a slightly sketchy, slightly dodgy way through the black market, I first have to figure out if these are the real deal. Potentially, I could use this death certificate to avoid debt, escape prison, or cash in on a 6-figure life insurance policy. I've arranged to meet critical illness and life insurance claims specialist,
Good to see you.
Matt Ran. If this certificate is the genuine article, he'll know it. So, this is the death certificate that we managed to get on the black market. And tell me if it is the real deal or not. What do you think?
Let's have a good look at it. Certainly looks like a real certificate, let me put it that way.
Okay.
In terms of something that's been obtained from an official source, but that's the paper that's written on. Okay, the actual form itself. You have an official stamp at the bottom that has been signed.
And does that official stamp look official to you?
It could well be official. The one thing I haven't got here is the cause of death itself.
Yeah, well, look, let me show you this then. So this is our medical certificate of cause of death.
It looks like a genuine form. Again, you have the stamp. It looks original, so it's not a photocopy or a scan or anything like that.
So the paper you think looks reasonably decent.
Yeah.
The stamp, reasonably decent. This isn't a photocopy.
No.
So far, so good.
But it rather depends on what is actually been written on here. That will give us the clues.
So what to you indicates whether it is real or not?
The first thing, the first red flag that you would see is the fact that we are talking Lagos in Nigeria. Unfortunately, bribery and corruption in many parts of the world is rife, and life insurance is seen as an easy win, okay? But in terms of the form itself, absolutely, it looks good. There is no two ways about it.
When it does unravel then, and when your investigators do find out that someone has faked their own death, what are the simple mistakes that people tend to make when they get caught, Matt?
People do very, very silly things because they don't understand necessarily how insurance works. They think, right, okay, if I'm in Lagos, London's many, many miles away, and they would never send anybody over.
If Paul O'Connor had faked his own death, and if he had submitted these documents, or someone on his behalf had submitted these documents in an attempt to make a fake insurance claim, it is possible, though, it could work.
It is possible it could work. Unless they have A, an insight into this type of fraud, and B, were on the lookout for it, I would say there is a chance that they would not see anything wrong with them, yes.
So, after some chasing and some very shady conversations with some even shadier type characters, I've pulled it off. I am dead. And here's the proof. This here is my death certificate, signed and sealed. Over the course of this investigation, I've been amazed at the lengths seemingly normal people will go to get their hands on an insurance payout that they're simply not entitled to. From faking extreme illnesses over many years to fabricating entirely fictional people. And it seems when it comes to cashing in, some people will quite literally check out.